Brilliant, thanks. Now, can you all hear me at the back there? Yeah. Wonderful, okay. Well, thanks very much for coming here. And I realize that I am really a kind of minnow in the ocean here. I am dwarfed by the collective experience that I see. There's even a friend of mine in the audience whose name is Peregrine. I mean, that shows dedication to this. It'd be like me calling myself Soundbite. So, you'll have to forgive me if this is a little amateur, compared to the very erudite presentations you've had. But I'm going to share with you some of my kind of experiences and how I got into birding in Africa, I suppose. I've put up there African birds, the long route. Why? Because it was a very long time before I got to actually birdwatch in Africa. I started out in the Middle East. Actually, to be honest, I started out when I was about 9. We lived in Holland, and my mum was always raising her binoculars in places like Texel and saying, these are wonderful birds, they're called avocets. And I didn't know what she was on about. Then I caught the bug, and then I went to school where the housemaster was just so appalling, and he was a birder, that was it. And I was 13, and I had better things to do in my teens. But I got back to it. We were in Bahrain, and having a picnic, actually, with my mum in some kind of oasis. And this tiny, bright red bird flew past. And then a bright yellow bird flew past. It was April. I thought, wow, I'm really curious, what are those? The red bird turned out to be an escaped Madagascan foddy. So that doesn't really count. The yellow was a migrating golden oriole. But it was enough to kind of hook me back into birding again. Because I was traveling loads around the Middle East, I started to get into it. And I remember feeling extremely disappointed that all the way over there in Bahrain, that a curlew should not be some exotic, Arabian curlew. No, plain old Eurasian curlew. Anyhow, the long route. Why am I putting that? Well, who can tell me which African country or which country this might be? Any real Africa experts here? You're all incredibly ignorant. I completely take back everything I said at the beginning. No, you're far smarter. You can smell a rat, and you're right. This isn't Africa at all. This is Saudi Arabia. And not a lot of people know that. In fact, most Saudis will say, no way, that's not my country. This is the Tihama. It's the southwest corner of Saudi Arabia, and of course it is the migratory fly route going up from the Horn of Africa up to Europe. And I took this picture like 20 years ago, and there's a tribe that lives down there, and it's so hot and sweaty that, really humid, that people wear these kind of wraparound lungis and fantastic costumes, but it's absolutely brilliant for birds. So the whole time that I was doing banking based in Bahrain, what I would do is I would do the business in Riyadh and Jeddah, and then I would tack on a couple of days at the weekend to go either walking up in the mountains or birding down there. And of course, birding, because these were African species down there, hammercops, battlers, Yemen thrush, that was a little further up, lots of Rupel's weavers, the trees were absolutely dangling in weavers' nests. So it was my first introduction to African birds down there. And of course, white Western bloke with binoculars, well, he's obviously a spy. He's got to be, So I quickly realized that when I went, and I also had a camera, so I was doubly a spy. So I had to learn the Arabic for things like, pink-backed pelican and greater flamingo. And what I would do is I would first of all go straight to the nearest National Guard post, show them the bird book, show them the Arabic words, and say, this is what I've come to. Ta'ala, come this way. We will show you the best route. And it was brilliant. And I had some really happy days birding there, seeing really some quite unusual species, like black-throated thrush, which I've never seen before or since. Lots of Nile Valley sunbirds. Really, it's such a stunning bird, that is. Saudi Arabia is actually really good for birds. You might think it's... someone's hearing aid's just gone off, I think, but is it yours, Perry? You get all these birds coming, both ways, I guess. This is about, probably about 2,500 meters up in the mountains, in the Asir Mountains. One tends to think of Saudi Arabia as being sand and sand dunes and desert highways and a few oil wells and gas flares. Actually, a lot of it is really brilliant for birds. It's a huge country, but down in the southwest is where you get the biggest variety and the biggest biological variety. These, I think, are steppe eagles. I'm happy to be corrected, but I'm always told that they're steppe eagles, which, as you can see, they're on pine trees there because it's quite high up. So you're getting a lot of brown-necked ravens, fan-tailed ravens, vultures up there as well. And I really got quite close to these. I think they were completely knackered probably from migrating. Also, a lot of Arabian golden cobras. I never saw them, but I kept being told, don't go down that valley, don't go down that gully, lots of cobras, which are neurotoxic, so you don't want to go there. Again, you wouldn't think that, this is an African bird, but this is still Saudi Arabia. Okay, what is this bird? Obviously, yeah. It's a spotted eagle owl. I'm just sort of, I'm just playing with you, really. But it was so weird. Because even there in the mountains, it's fairly arid. So I would always this is before my injuries, so I'd stroll down with my little rucksack on my shoulder and my binoculars and guidebook, and I would always go to where the nearest bit of vegetation was, duh. So it was extraordinary. Here was a kind of little cluster of what looked like pine trees. And it was amazing. In the space of 1 minute, I saw a pair of these. I'm as close to this bird as I am to you. And eventually, they literally crapped themselves and flew off. And in the space of a minute, I saw them, brown woodland warbler, and Arabian waxbill. All three lifer ticks for me, which I'd never seen before. But it was just so surprising to see that in a place like Saudi. But eventually I crossed the Red Sea and went to Eritrea. In fact, actually, we got a sort of cheap ticket that went from Jeddah across to Asmara. And Eritrea, unfortunately, it's gone a bit downhill since we went. But it was a safe and fascinating place to go there. And it was my first experience of sub-Saharan Africa. I'd lived in Egypt, but it was my first experience of birds there. And actually, it was years ago, Keith Betton, who identified this for me as a chestnut-bellied starling. And as you can see, I was really close to it. It was fantastic there because you got the mountain birds up in the hills, up in Asmara, and further down, you got the sort of, kind of montane birds. And then down on the coast, you get all the Red Sea birds like crab plover and Abyssinian roller. Absolutely beautiful and a lovely place to be. There were forests there as well, close to the Ethiopian border. And everybody knows what this one is. It's a house sparrow, you're quite right. It's a beautiful bird, red-cheeked cordon bleu. And again, just for somebody who had spent by then about 3 or 4 years birding in the rather kind of dun-coloured avifauna of the Middle East, to be amongst all this kind of exotic plumage of Africa was just absolutely thrilling. And we went, well, this was halfway down the mountains. And I love this photo, actually, because it was so beautiful. This was at the top of a valley, and this is a greater blue-eared glossy star. Sorry, greater glossy. Do you know what? I'll start again. One of you give it to me. Fantastic, thank you. This is like a scene out of Monty Python, How shall we? One of the lovely species that you get there, and again, not a bird that occurs in Arabia nor in Egypt. So, for me, birding is more than just about looking at the birds. It's about getting out into the environment, and I'm even, I do it now. I've got a bike attachment that fits into the front of my wheelchair. It's a hand bike, and it allows me to get over rough ground and off-road. And I took it to Thailand over Christmas, New Year, and I was able to get right into Krang Kachan Reserve there, and even fording rivers and things like that. I managed to leave the stand back in a river there. It just came off, but it was great. So, one of the reasons I enjoy birding is that it's it's a kind of mutual thing. It gets me out into wild country, and it allows me to see really unusual birds. And so I always carry binoculars with me on assignment. I've just come back actually from 3 days in Spain, which was bird-wise amazingly frustrating. We were staying 3 miles from the Cota de Doñana wetlands reserve, and already on the way I'd seen black storks as well as white storks. But I had a crew with me, and we had no time to stop. It was the most frustrating thing, and I just knew there were these amazing birds, a stone's throw away, and it was straight back to the airport because I had something I had to be at on Saturday. I couldn't remember what it was. So there we are in Asmara at a lovely little Italian restaurant called the Il Castello, and this bird just kept hopping around there, and it's a very common bird, obviously, streaky seed eater, but it was just wonderful. I thought, this is just great. Digging into the old pasta and the tomato sauce, and there is a bird I'd never seen before, just hopping around at my feet, which was lovely. So, Rwanda. Probably some of you have been there. This is quite poignant this year because it's the 20th anniversary of the genocide there. I had some of you probably might have seen it actually this thing's not very stable, is it? Okay. This could be interesting. All right. You're all right in the front there. I might be seeing you soon. Rwanda, a friend of mine bid for and got in some lottery, in some auction. She bid for tickets for a kind of guerrilla safari thing, an eco safari in Rwanda. And my wife said, look, this is your scene. You go on this. Why don't you keep her company? So I did. So I booked the safari first, and then I booked the ticket with Kenya Airways. And I thought, as a precaution, I'd better just ring up and make sure that 8-hour flight to Nairobi, I just better make sure that there's going to be an onboard wheelchair to get to the loo. And I rang up, and they said, no, there isn't. Your friends must take you to the loo. What? I said, well, that's unreasonable. It's 8 hours. Yeah, well, no, we don't do that. It's not our policy. And I thought, okay, I've already paid for the safari, so I can't back out of it now. So I'll wear my calipers and bring my frame and stagger to the loo. It's not going to be easy, but I'll manage it because I don't want to give this up. When I got to Terminal 4, the very unpleasant ground staff, who were not Rwandan or Kenyan, they were British, but they were really unpleasant. And they just said, no, your Zimmer frame's too wide, it can't come on the plane. I said, this is absurd. Look, how else I've bent over, as it were, metaphorically, to make it easy for you. So I will get on board the plane, I will reach from seat to seat to get to my seat because you won't take me. And they try to not let me on the plane. They try to offload me. My friends who were richer than me were going business class, so they kicked up such a fuss and said they would offload themselves that they didn't let me on. So begrudgingly, they let me on. And I was pretty hacked off about this. And when we finally got to Rwanda, it was lovely. The access I knew was going to be difficult, and sure enough it was, but they were so nice about it. We landed at Kigali, and a very nice woman came out of the airport terminal and said, look, I'm so sorry, there's loads of steps up there. We can't process your passport in the building, but if you don't mind waiting under this acacia tree, give us your passport and we'll do it for you. And I was more than happy. The tree was alive with sunbirds, I said, take your time, no rush, stamp it as many times as you want, do the background checks, knock yourself out. But it was all about the difference in attitude that, Kenya Airways had been really unpleasant about it and unhelpful. And instead of thinking, right, how can we get round this, they had placed obstacles. And I thought, you know what, I don't think I'm going to let them get away with this. So I then did an interview when I got back for Radio 4, You and Yours, the Consumer Affairs program. And, I thought, well, that'll be that. But of course, the Mail on Sunday picked up on it. And it then, I've spared you, I've actually got this half-page thing they did, like TV reporter told her you can't board your Zimmer frame, etc. My daughter, who's here today, has laminated that, and I travel with it in my rucksack. So, it's like, you don't want this. And, you know, I am really not a kind of wheelchair warrior. There are people who go around the world making trouble on this kind of thing. But it's when I feel that there is a completely unnecessary block being put in the way, then, you know, the red mist comes down. So the net result was that Kenya Airways apologized. They had a brilliant guy, a kind of comms manager back in Nairobi, who immediately saw that this was going viral on Twitter and would be very bad for them. And he rang me up, he contacted me, he said, first of all, we apologize. Secondly, we're looking into it. Thirdly, we will change our policy and allow wheelchairs on board, you know, have an aisle chair. And finally, would you like to come down and meet our chief exec in Nairobi? We'll fly you down. So we did all of that, and they were brilliant. And he said, from now on, the chief exec, he said, we're making this a case study within Kenya Airways of how not to handle somebody, which I thought was great. So, and it was great because I got sort of nice little thank yous from sort of disabled tour groups and even, you know, just elderly tour groups who had, up until then, not gone to Kenya because Kenya Airways don't take, or they'd not gone on Kenya Airways because they don't provide the ability to go to the loo. It's a kind of basic human right, really. This, of course, is what everybody comes to Rwanda to see, or one of the main things they come to see. And it's, if you haven't done it, it's fantastic. Look, if some disabled bugger like me can get up to see these things, there is no reason why anybody, you know, else couldn't. And when I saw the means they were going to use to get me up there, and it was basically this rattan stretcher with cushions. And because the way it works is you get up really, really early. You stay in this lovely sort of camp up on overlooking the lakes, the Great Lakes. And then you, really early, before dawn, you go to this sort of central wildlife center where you get packaged out. And they say, you know, you will go with the Kitonga group, and you will go, you know, what they do is they've sent the guides out first thing in the morning, and they're all ex-poachers, and they sniff out where the gorilla families are, and then they come back, and then they parcel it out. And you're given 1 hour with the gorillas, but you've got to get there first. So they drove us up in Land Rovers into farmland. I mean, frankly, it looked like Devon. You know, and it's quite sort of cold and misty. And then from there, you trek. Well, I didn't trek, I had people to do it for me. But you get, you trek up to the forest edge, you literally just hop over a bit of barbed wire and a stone wall fence and up into this tangle of forest. And of course, they know the routes. And in my case, I was carried by this in this sort of, it's like a kind of palanquin, really. I really felt like a kind of Chinese emperor. I said, you know, is this thing going to carry me? He said, don't worry, we had a very fat woman in here last week. And it is the most amazing thing because you smell the gorillas. These are mountain gorillas. You smell them before you see them. And it's this really powerful, musty animal smell. You think, my God, what is that? And then the guide says, shh, 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 he's right there, he's right there. And there is this massive guy who actually looks just like a friend of mine. This guy is like, I say guy, I mean, because they are, whatever it is, 97% of our DNA. It's something incredible. There's something very human about them. There's this massive guy chewing away on a bamboo and just looking at you. It's like, yeah, you want a piece of this? You know? And you only have, as I say, 1 hour with them because, and you were not supposed to go within 7 feet of them. And one of the baby gorillas was absolutely fascinated in my wheelchair. It had never seen one before. So it kept sort of coming towards me. And the guides have this amazing language. So what they do, the guides, when they come up, they send a message to the gorillas, we come in peace. And they go, and that means, you know, no harm, we're just here to kind of just watch you. But if the gorillas come too close, they get like that. And it really seems to work. And this little baby gorilla was kind of, would come towards, and then just sort of stretch out, like just stretching, but each time it stretched, it moved a little bit closer to the wheelchair. I thought, that's pretty smart, actually. But there's a friend of mine, I'm sure you know, Dr. Stuart Butchart from BirdLife, who has gone way further than that. There's a picture of him I mean, he's practically married to a baby gorilla. No disrespect to Lisa, his wife, but I mean, there was a picture of him really, really close to one of these things, and he's got the most fantastic picture that I couldn't top of him alone in a glade, facing down a silverback. He's in his wheelchair. I should mention, he was shot birding in Guatemala in 2000. So, and he's been a huge inspiration to me. But there's a picture of him in his wheelchair, alone in this glade, facing down this massive, great silverback. And it's just one of those wonderful moments in nature, because if anything went wrong, you've got no chance. You're not going to, you can hardly run behind a tree. What are you going to do? You're in a wheelchair. So your life is in their hands. And the guides, in my case, pretty nervous, but it was fine. So that was a great experience. We stayed at this lovely eco safari camp, probably at about 2,000 meters up, quite sort of cold and misty, sunny by day. And that was the view outside my little hut, which I think is a Hugh Glyn's robin. Have I got that right? Any dissenters? All right, there's sort of mutterings in the ranks there. I'm not sure about this chap's pedigree. Well, anyhow, it's some kind of robin chap. We'll leave it at that. But it was just wonderful that we were only there 3 nights, and every day, every moment of the day, there was something different, sort of hopping around, trying to get in, or just chirping from the trees, and it was lovely there, and the food was great. That was also in the trees there. I think it's a bugler-fetched weaver, isn't it? Just absolutely beautiful. Great food as well. Kenya. So I thought, right, I'll take them up on this, Kenya Airways. I like the idea of this. And almost as an exercise, because I'd run out of leave, I thought, right, I will go down to Kenya for the weekend. Why not? I want to see if I can do this in a wheelchair, nobody helping me. So I flew overnight Friday night and came back on the Monday. And in that weekend, I saw 113 species. And I'm not that, I'm sort of, in terms of not, you're thinking, yeah, I'm not sure I trust this bloke. I had some very good bird guides with me, so local ones. But it was just brilliant. What I did was I booked in advance a place called the Simba Lodge in Lake Naivasha, which is about 2 or 3 hours up from Nairobi. And I got Kenya Airways, at my expense, to book me a taxi to meet me at Nairobi Airport and just drive straight up to the Rift Valley. And it was just fantastic. These are obviously hippos there on one of the lakes. And I was able to see quite a variety of different habitat there. On the lakes, obviously, loads of flamingos. I think there were lesser flamingos there. But it was, the whole gardens were just alive with birds. Kenya is amazing, as you know, for birds. I think it's got in excess of 1,300 species, and it's very accessible. It's whatever it is, 8 hours by non-stop by plane from here. Now, this guy was brilliant. He's called Johnson, and he belongs to the country club on Lake Naivasha. And this is actually where, in the old days, the flying boats used to fly in, the passenger flying boats, these great big Sunderland-type things, would land, skimming the water. And, we're talking sort of Agatha Christie kind of Death on the Nile type era in the 20s, when people were dressed entirely in beige. And they would collect them, and then they would then make the journey on from there to Nairobi. But this guy knew his birds. He was brilliant. Not only he knew them, but he was able to spot them way ahead of me, which is not saying much, but he would, for example, that bush there on the right, he would say, look, Jacana. And I said, where? Yeah, oh my God, yes, you're right. He was seeing things well ahead of me. Wonderful guy, obviously a Maasai from his red and black checkered cloth there. Very good English. And he's on email. If anybody, which is great, the modern Maasai. If anybody wants his email, just send Keith a message, and I will happily pass it on to you. And that was a very happy period, actually. So I did this, 1.5 years ago. And my God, these things are noisy. This is Hadada ibis. And the first time I heard it, I nearly shot out of my chair. They are so noisy, these things. But they are, of course, just prowling around the gardens there in the hotel. The Simba Lodge was very cheap. It was like less than $100 a night for a perfectly comfortable room, mosquito nets, good food there, and it goes right down to the lake. That was the view at the bottom of the garden. I mean, the giraffes just breezed in and breezed out, which was lovely. Lots of wood hoopers in the garden, lots of superb starlings, and plenty of other birds too. This is at a place called Hell's Gate. Slightly harder one to guess. I'll tell you what, I'm gonna narrow this down a bit. Front row only. What is this? You're just passengers, aren't you? I'm told that it's an anteater chat, a northern anteater chat. Well done. Yeah, she got it. Yeah, it's in a place called Hell's Gate, which is just near Lake Naivasha, and it's grassland. So you've got olive baboons sort of picking nits out of each other, and zebras, neighing away. It's a thrilling place, and I was so envious. There was a guy there camping with his son, and I thought, wow, that would have been really cool to do. What a great thing to do. Apparently, no lions there. You can take that or leave it, But something I didn't realize is that most of Kenya's lions, I was told, are outside reserves. So they are genuinely wild. And I don't know what the figures are for kind of attacks, but not to be trifled with. I'm really proud of this shot. It's my only sort of time I've ever actually kind of caught nature in the tooth and claw, as it were. And this was in the grounds of the country club at Lake Naivasha. So let's go for the third row this time. And who knows what the one on the left is? Very good, yeah. And fourth row. God, I'm so impressed. Okay, yeah. Yeah, and I took loads of pictures of it, but it was incredible. It was just like, how stupid do you have to be to keep feeding something that is sort of already 3 times your size and not real? Anyhow, it's just cuckoos are amazing. You've got to respect them, really. Fantastic. And I did manage to see some adult red-chested cuckoos as well, which of course looked nothing like this. But it was so noisy. It was just really persistent, demanding to be fed the whole time. And this poor chat just, was flying itself blind, going backwards and forwards to put grubs into its mouth. And I was really close to it. It was wonderful. That was one of the ones Johnson spotted on the lake. And this, he's just one of my favorites. It's such a lovely bird, this. Let's go for second to the back row. Giant kingfisher. Yeah, it's huge. It's like a sort of turkey, this thing, just sitting up there. And as you can see from the angle, I was in a boat with Johnson, the Maasai, and we just sort of drifted underneath it, and he didn't even move. He never took his eyes off us, but he didn't move because we just, obviously no sudden movements, which is the closest I will ever get, I think, to a giant kingfisher. And again, it's just a lovely bird. Most of the pelicans I've always seen have either been brown pelican in the Western Hemisphere or pink-backed in the Red Sea, which is sort of, by comparison, they're quite dirty, really. They're kind of off-white and a bit scruffy. There's something really beautiful about this great white pelican. It's just absolutely lovely. Huge birds as well. And one of my favorites, this guy. Again, it's a bird, it's an African bird that you can get in Arabia. They've been seen in some of the remoter gullies and wadis in Yemen and possibly in Oman, Malachite kingfisher. And it's such a special bird. I just think I took a lot of photos of it. And again, I was kind of, because we're in the boat, we're drifting right close to it. I hardly even needed the lens to photograph it. It's one of my favorite birds. And this is in the grounds of the hotel. I'd actually seen this thing in transit when we went to Rwanda. I saw it in Nairobi airport through the window. I thought, wow, you know, I'm not even out of the airport, and already I've seen an amazing species. And it's almost like a national bird, isn't it, in Kenya, this thing? I mean, they're everywhere, but they are so colorful. It's superb starling. It's absolutely lovely. Okay, fifth row. Fifth row. This is like University Challenge, you know. I think you're probably right. I mean, you'd know more than me, but I was told it was a bronze sunbird. Any dissenters? Okay. But you can see, I mean, I'm really close to this thing. I mean, it was a wonderful, the wheelchairs obviously made it a lot harder for me to bird, particularly to kind of off-road places. I mean, the amount of really annoying things where you're in a forest and the guy will say, "Now, to see the really rare species, I'm sorry, but we've got to go down this track here, and that's you out," you know, which is so frustrating. But on the plus side, it is a stable platform, you know, and I don't move much sort of when I'm, you know, in a garden. So I just sort of sit myself there, ready with the lens, and I put the sun behind me and found a gap in the foliage and just waited for birds like that to come and perch on the whatever this flower is. And it was wonderful. I mean, there was something different every 5 minutes there. This is at Nairobi, very close to the airport in Nairobi. I think it's the Oluserene airport. And fourth row are going to tell us what this is. Spot on. Mosque swallow, yeah. I was so close to it, which was lovely. Beyond that, the kind of out-of-focus green stuff you can see in the background is Nairobi National Park. And there's something really cool about sipping a Tusker beer and watching wild zebra and giraffe just stroll past. And people are incredibly friendly there. And once I got to the country, I mean, once I was over this problem and the problem with Kenya Airways, by the way, was back here, not there. And I've been really impressed by how they've dealt with it. So once I got there, everything was incredibly easy. People were very friendly and helpful. And there was no sort of stigma about being in a wheelchair. People just helped. But I didn't need much help, and it was wonderful waiting for my flight, you know, having a last beer, watching the mosque swallows on the wire there, and raising my eyes up to look at some of the bigger wildlife going through the park. It's incredible. And that was in the gardens of the hotel, like about a mile from the airport. Let's go for the final back row. Man yawning. Any ideas? Well, I was told it was Speaks Weaver. Speaks Weaver or lesser masks? What do we think? Speaks Weaver, right. Right, out, all of you. Gambia. Probably some of you have been. I really recommend it. We went in April last year. Great little holiday. We went for a week. Well under $3,000 for four, family of four, staying in a 4-star place. The only downside I'd say about Gambia is what the Gambians call the bumpsters, basically the touts who hang around on the beach and outside the hotel. Just, you know, these are not good people. They're sort of, I don't know how you describe them really, but I mean, they're out to sort of rip you off in most cases. And it's such a shame because they're doing the country a big disservice. I wrote about it in the travel piece in the paper. And it's a shame because it's a lovely destination and fantastic for birds. It's really quick to get to. It's whatever it is, 5 hours from here, non-stop, no time change, pretty safe, lovely people. And this was the ferry crossing up to the northern shore of the Gambia, which was great. Chickens, goats, the whole thing. And I did a kind of one-day excursion into Senegal from there. The ferry had broken down, so I had to, the only way across was this, in a pirogue. And the guy, our guide, there were about, I don't know, 6 of us that went into Senegal for the day. And we were getting on one of these things, and he said, actually, this is exactly what we made it to the Canary Islands in. I said, what are you talking about? He said, no, I'm a failed asylum seeker. I mean, yeah, which didn't actually give me a huge amount of confidence in this boat. But, and there's some quite serious waves there. You know, we're talking about the mouth of the River Gambia, which is, I mean, Gambia is like, you remember the old Pac-Man sort of things, you know, that swallow things? It's like that. It's in the middle of Senegal, and it's got the River Gambia that dissects it. And of course, it starts out as a tiny little stream up in the desert, and then it's forested, and it ends up going into the open sea, into the Atlantic. So we had to cross at the widest point because the ferry had broken down. And the only way across was in this. I had to get carried by 2 big lads. I had to put an arm round each shoulder, and these guys carried me through the waves, and then dumped me on a pile of I don't know, some kind of sacking there. And then we just sort of buffeted our way through. And of course, I'm thinking, if we capsize, what do I do? Okay, boots off probably, but won't have time to do it. I'll just, you know, I'll cling to the wreckage. But we got, and at the other end, there was this army of people coming out looking for business. So I had to very quickly choose 2 guys. Otherwise, it would have been choosing 100. So I chose the 2 guys. Right, you come and, you know, and get me off the boat. While somebody else carried my wheelchair to the shore. And I had to move really quickly. My family refused to come with me on this. Afterwards, they're saying, yeah, I wish we'd come with you. You know, it would have been really fun. Right, you know. Beach versus crossing the River Gambia. They've got no sense of adventure. But it was, I'm glad I did it. It was good. Well, that was actually in the grounds of the hotel. I love this bird, actually, partly because it was one of the first birds I saw in the Horn of Africa, red-billed firefinch. And it's just such a sort of, it's such a bird of the location, I think, for Africa. And these guys as well. This is actually at a rubbish tip just at the back of the hotel. They didn't seem too bothered by me, red-billed, hornbill. And this, I think, is one of my favorite birds, actually. It's really lovely. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We haven't had the 6th row. 6th row, any guesses what this is? No. Blue-bellied roller, yeah. It's very similar to the Abyssinian roller. You know, it's probably taxonomically very similar, but it's blue-bellied roller, and lots of them. And I mean, you can get really close. You know, I'm used to sort of having to, in the Middle East, you know, spot birds miles away that look exactly the same color as their environment. But these guys are just one big, you know, Benetton advert. And them as well. Of course, it's great in the evening light. And the first one of these I ever saw was in the Horn of Africa. And I thought, wow, that has got to be a seriously exotic pigeon. It's speckled pigeon, which is quite common in Africa, as you know, but it's still lovely, especially when they're pushing their throat feathers out. But this is really the bird, I think, in Gambia, which, back to the first row, any advance on beautiful sunbird? It is beautiful sunbird, yeah. And these lovely, trailing tail feathers, just beautiful. And they've got a lovely song, too. And they're all over the hotel. It's just wonderful. This guy also lives there. He's called Billy. He has a name. It's amazing. They had a flood a few years back. And this guy turned up at the cafe next to the hotel and won't leave. And he now lives there, and they feed him every day at 5 o'clock with fish. They toss these huge, great big fish in. And he hasn't eaten anybody else yet so far. You know, they've taken children quite close to him, but no, he's got a diet of fish. And I mean, one day it's all going to go horribly wrong, and we'll read about it, and, you know, My Pool Horror by, you know, Joe and Fran from the Midlands. But, you know, but so far he's behaved himself. I think that's lovely that, you know, probably they'll have another flood and then he'll get a mate to play with. But for now, he's quite happy being fed there. And this one, there's a place called Tangi, which is just south of Banjul. And so, third row. Actually, you're not allowed to speak because you know everything. So, say again? Spot on. African wattle lapwing. Yep. It's not the greatest shot, but it's still a lovely bird. I mean, I love these plovers that just, they stop and run, and you have this kind of grandmother's footsteps thing with them. You get closer and you think, okay, I'll just squeeze. Oh, he's moved again. We've all been there. And the final one I'm going to show from Gambia is really for Keith. Where's Keith? Where is he? He's right in the front row. This is a bone of contention with me and Keith because, I'm going to eke this out a bit actually. Like most people, I keep the odd, I keep a list. I keep a sort of world tick list. In fact, I sent it to Peregrine over here once, and being barely into 4 figures, he sent me back an email saying, I think there's some problem with your email. I only got 4 pages, whatever. Where are the rest of them? No, those are all the birds I've seen, Peregrine. But Keith, I think, is sort of approaching 8,000 now. So, but one of them he hasn't seen, and it's this one. Hearing is not believing. It's not. It's a bronze-winged courser, and it's actually, I don't know if it's endangered or threatened, but it's not in a good shape in Gambia. There are not many of them, and where we were, this bird was trying to nest, and it was getting disturbed a lot, not by us, but by the village, which was expanding. So it's quite an elusive bird. I don't. It's a good question. Is it nocturnal? I don't know. Yes. Yeah. The guru says yes. I'm going to just throw in a few sort of bonus ones now. Djibouti, which I was back in Djibouti 2 months ago, and it was really lovely actually because this was literally right by the hotel, and I had my binos on the shore. I was looking actually just a pair of redshanks, common redshanks on the shore. And it very rarely happens this, I was looking, and right into the viewfinder flew a pair of crab plovers. And it was just like, wow, that's fantastic. It is such a beautiful bird. I think it's really one of the most beautiful shorebirds. But I then, when we'd finished filming, we did an embed with the Americans there. And when I finished that, cameraman and producers wanted to spend the whole day by the pool. So I said, look, I'm going to flag down a taxi and head up to the Rift Valley and go and see what I can see. And it was great. I sat up on this sort of Rift Valley crag, watching a whole troop of baboons raiding a village. But I also saw a bunch of LBJs, which I can't identify. So I'm really open to offers here. Starting with this guy. These are not good photographs. I mean, it could be a black start. I don't know. I mean, I'm not being funny, like, I don't know. I mean, does anybody know what this is?
Well, how could they know it was my guess? Where's Jason or Nigel and Nick?
They've all gone home. They've flagged it away. Does anybody?
Black Star, what do you reckon?
No, it's just badly photographed. I mean, it was one of those difficult things where about 10 feet to the left of this was a couple, including a woman, and the women don't like being photographed there at all. So I was having to make it very obvious I was photographing the bird, not you, madam, so I had to be really quick, which is why it's so badly taken. But so okay, nobody knows then, except possibly Black Star, okay. Then there's this guy, which is even worse. It's so blurred, but I mean, it really is like one of these sort of, children's magazine puzzles, Any ideas? Pass. Right, okay. The final one's not much better. It's been suggested that it's Isabelline Wheatier. Yeah? Okay. And I think that is, yep, that's it. Okay, thank you very much. Sure, yeah.
Frank's happy to take a couple of questions. I know we're running a little late, but any questions for Frank? And they don't want to ask any questions. Any questions? Okay. Well, look, I mean, this has today been about a mixture of conservation, it's been about science, and now it's been about enthusiasm. And if you could get all that enthusiasm together in all of us, I think we'd have no problems in Africa, would we? I think it was a fantastic talk, and it's great to hear you talk about it with all that enthusiasm. And persuade your friends at the BBC to cover more African issues and the conservation issues that we're worried about. Ladies and gentlemen, Frank Gardner.
Yeah, sure.
Someone's got the raffle tickets, hopefully. They're at the back. Okay,
Do you want me to come, shall I come over? Do you want me to come over? No, that's fine.
For 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Okay.
Okay.
We need some? 11. Okay. Shall I announce it?
12.
Number
12 actually.
No, not the first number,
Oh,
just
right,
the number.
okay. 383. Okay.
Okay.
Green 202. Okay. Yellow 359. Yep. So what about the ones that haven't been claimed?
We'll just keep going till no
Yeah.
prizes left.
Yellow 325. 320.
Yellow 325.
Sorry, I've got terrible diction. Pink 188. 188, pink. Pink 203. I'm going to dig a bit deeper now. Pink 343. They're going fast. Okay. Pink 144. Green 203. I've got that Birds of Gambia. Let's go. Oh, which one's the author? Okay.
Nick Burrows, stand up, please.
Who's Nick Burrows? Yeah.
Who's the artist?
No, just
We're just praising your book.
yeah. Who wrote that? Pink 366. Okay. I think this lady here deserves one. She's been getting everything right.
Pink 366.
Green 199. Yep. Well done. Pink 145. Pink 145. Oh, I see. Right, sorry. Pink 301. 301. Pink 408.
Pink's going on.
There's one there. Just one left, right. Last one. Yellow 406. Ah. I think bird, yeah.
I was like,
That's good.
Great. Cheers.
So we've actually raised £436 in the raffle. What I'd like to do, first of all, on behalf of all of you, is thank all of today's speakers for a fantastic job. And particularly the museum staff and all the ABC council members for making it such a great day. And afterwards, if you'd like to join us, it's the Hoop and Toy, and it's upstairs in the bar. I hope you'll join us for a drink there before you go home. Thanks very much for coming if you don't.
Signed books.
And and some books. Frank has signed books outside. He's done them already.
Yep.
So if you'd like any of Frank's books, he's got 2 books there, both fascinating ones, outside just there. Thanks very much indeed for coming.
Thanks.